channel. I'm Taryn with Sow in the City. As you can see, I'm outside in my garden again, and that's because we're finally doing an updated garden tour. I can't remember which week I did the last one, but nonetheless, I do have some updates to tell you, some great and some not so great. But let's get started. Okay, y'all, so I'm gonna start with the positive. So as you can see right here, there are a lot of vines in this raised bed. That's because these are sweet potatoes. And I think the last time I showed you them, the vines were still pretty significant, but I don't think they were leaning over the raised bed like you can see here and like right there. I don't think they were doing that just yet, but they're definitely doing it now. These are looking really healthy. I planted them in, ooh, I should know this, like the beginning of May. So they're not going to be ready until they've had 3 months, at least 3 months to grow. So I definitely won't even see if they're ready until like August. And even then, I don't think they'll really be ready until September. These take a long time to grow, but they're looking good so far. I do have a little holes, some holes in some of the leaves, like right here, but it's not significant. Okay, y'all, so now I'm going to show you my first watermelon dedicated raised bed. So as you can see right here, everything is really growing out. Like the vines are spreading everywhere. We're even having some of the vines like fall down onto the grass, and we have a lot of actual fruit. So this bed, of course, is filled with melons. I planted 5 melons in this bed, mostly Crimson Sweet and Jubilee. So they're doing quite well. I also have some squash that's growing in this bed. There's 2 specifically that I know is growing in here. The reason why I'm somewhat not certain, because there's just a lot of vines, so sometimes it's hard to really see everything. But I know I have at least 2 or 3 butternut squashes in this bed, and they are butternut squashes. I think the last time I did a garden tour, I told you that I wasn't sure if these were butternut squashes or not. They are butternut squashes, but the melons are looking pretty good. But I do have to say, some of the not so good news is that I do believe we are having some white flies cause some damage to the garden. And I told you guys this a few weeks ago when I was talking about the tomato plants that are in the back of the garden. So those were being damaged by white flies, but I took care of them. My dad and I used organic like bug spray that wasn't bad for the beneficial insects, and we saved the plants. Those insects have moved to other areas of the garden, and one of them being our watermelon beds. We have had a few watermelons on this bed that like started to get dark spots, and the leaves started to die off. We did our research, and it's white fly damage. What we've been doing is just continue to spray these beds with organic, no bad chemicals, but organic spray that will deter the white flies as much as we can, and it will also not scare off the beneficial insects. That's about all we can do, and we're just gonna keep trying to fight off these white flies just until we can get a harvest. We don't have to even get a harvest from all of these watermelons. We just want to harvest one from some of them. Okay, let's keep going. So this is the second watermelon dedicated raised bed. I can't even say that twice. So this has pretty much the same story as the other one that I just showed you. It suffered some white fly damage, but overall I think we can try and save what we can. I think if I had to count the number of watermelons that have suffered due to the white fly damage, I would say about 3, but 2 of them were like baby melons. They weren't even as big as like a quarter. I'm not too upset about that, but like I said, I do have to, my dad and I are going to really take care of these beds and make sure that we don't go more than a day without spraying with our organic white fly deterring. So this is some really good news. This tomato area is actually doing really well. So in the beginning, it struggled a little bit, but my dad and I we didn't allow ourselves to get discouraged, and we kept taking care of it. Now it's doing quite well. Even though there are some yellow leaves, I'm honestly not too worried about that. I can just take off the yellow leaves and keep spraying it with our organic spray. I think it'll be just fine. We've been getting a lot of harvest from this area, so sometimes when you're growing big beefsteak tomatoes, it can take a while for the tomatoes to actually get ripe, and I think that was that was something that we had to really be patient with, was just waiting for the beefsteak tomatoes to actually get large enough to where they would ripen. And so now they are finally ripening, and we are getting some really big juicy tomatoes. I'm so happy. We've had a lot of beautiful harvest. I have a wide variety back here of beefsteak tomatoes. I think it's a mix of like Rose de Bern, Arkansas Traveler, and Mr. Stripey, I think. But I thought I planted a purple tomato back here, but I don't think I did. Like, I thought I planted one purple variety, like a Black Beauty, but all of these are red. Either way, we're finally getting harvest from back here, and I'm just ecstatic. Like, I'm so happy. So now I am in my fruit tree area of the garden. Our fruit trees are pretty much done for this season, and I've explained this a little bit in the past, but I'll explain it for you as well. Some of these fruit trees are tropical fruit trees, meaning they're not native, and some of these fruit trees are native. So I apologize for the background noise. So the issue that my dad and I had was, we put all of these fruit trees in the greenhouse to protect them during the winter. We thought that that was fine because, you know, we've been having some cold temperatures for the past few winters. The only problem with that is the native fruit trees actually do need to be out for the winter. One of my commenters informed me that some of our native fruit trees need to have what they refer to as cold hours, which just means it gets to a certain temperature during the winter that will help it to go dormant, so that when the spring comes back, they'll be able to, you know, wake back up and produce fruit for the spring. We didn't allow our native fruit trees to go through that process. We only got fruit from one of our trees out of all of the trees, and that was one of our peach trees. At least we got fruit. Like, we could have gotten no fruit from all of our trees, but we did get fruit from one of our trees. So this is one of my favorite sections of the garden, one of my favorite raised beds. This is the zucchini squash / yellow squash dedicated raised bed. This is doing much better than I ever thought it would do. Don't get me wrong, it is, you know, going through some small struggles, but we're still getting harvest from this raised bed. In fact, my dad and I have already harvested some really big zucchini squash. That is really a blessing, because last summer I told my dad, like, we really need to work on growing zucchini squash, because last summer we got all yellow squash. I don't even think we got one zucchini squash. That was one of our goals for this year, was to get some zucchini squash. And you know what? We did. And we're continuing to get some zucchini squash. And I think there's like one that's left that needs to be harvested in here. I can't remember. But that's something that we also have to work on. Like, my dad and I will look throughout the garden, you know, every day, and we won't see any zucchini, and then the next day we'll see a huge zucchini. I try and check it every day, thoroughly check it. And I do have a butternut squash that's growing in this bed as well, and I have this beautiful dill plant. I planted some dill in this bed because it's a companion plant. So companion plants are plants that you can plant next to other plants because they'll be beneficial to each other, and they may deter the bad pest while continuing to attract the good pest. So I planted the dill with the squash, and it is just so beautiful. It's huge, like, and it smells so good. I need to make some pickles with it or something. I need to figure it out. I'm going to be completely honest with you when it comes to this bed right here. This is my cucumber bed. This bed is struggling really bad, okay? Now, I'm not going to give up on this bed because I refuse. I work too hard to grow these cucumbers. But this bed has been hit really hard by these cucumber beetles, and probably the white flies, and just the fact that it's super humid here. Cucumbers are one of the plants that are really sensitive to humid climates and hot weather. you know, wet weather. We've had lots of humid, rainy days. The mixture of all three of those things has caused these cucumbers to struggle a little bit. Don't get me wrong, we're still getting a few harvests here and, you know, every other day maybe. It's struggling. A lot of the leaves have died back. So what you really see in this bed are just the vines. A lot of the leaves have just died. I still think that I can save it as much as it can be saved. I'm taking off all the bad leaves as quickly as I can. I'm spraying the bed down with the organic bug spray. It's not bad for the beneficial ones, just attacks the non-beneficial ones. So that's what we've been trying to do, and I think it'll be okay. I'm not too upset about it. It's one of those things that just happens. Every year you face something in the garden, and this year it's difficulty with the cucumbers and these white flies and cucumber beetles. So I would hate to get rid of this whole bed and have to start over with something else. Even though I still technically have time to do that, I don't want. These tomatoes that you see behind me, these are, I want to say they're pretty much done for the season, but honestly that may not be the case. It's kind of like the other section with the white flies. I'm going to have to just take off some of the bad leaves and treat it a little bit, but I do think that I could still get a few harvests out of these, because overall they don't look that bad. I just have to take off some of the yellow leaves, but I think it'll still be okay. We've gotten a lot of good harvest out of these plants, and there's still a few tomatoes on them. So I think I'm just gonna take care of it as I should and see what happens from there. This here section is my bean section. Some of these plants are green beans and some of these plants are black-eyed peas. The reason why I don't specifically say which plants are green beans and which are black-eyed peas is because, as always, I didn't particularly label them. I've had a problem where recently I took off some black-eyed peas thinking that it was a green bean, but it was a black-eyed pea, so I took them off too early. I can't believe I did that. Overall, I think this area is doing quite well. All of the plants have grown and they're starting to produce, except for one. One black-eyed pea plant hasn't produced yet because I planted it late, but the others are starting to produce, so I'm getting a lot of harvest from them, especially my green bean. That's still really good. The leaves have taken a little bit of a hit. I know you're like, oh my gosh, I know. The white flies have kind of gotten on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, all you really need are the flowers to produce fruit, not necessarily the leaves. From looking at all of this, I say it's still doing quite well. I actually need to harvest some of these beans today. I may have a little harvest at the end of this. That would be nice. Now this section I'm really excited about. This is the pepper section. I would say I have about 15 or something pepper plants, but they look really good. None of these peppers are actually ready to be harvested yet, and so I'll know that they're ready to be harvested when they actually start to change color, because none of these are actually green. They're supposed to be red, yellow, and or orange or chocolatey. I'm just waiting for them to ripen. I think overall I could see like 10 small fruits total on all of these plants combined. I would say 10. As far as the bell peppers or the sweet peppers are concerned. Growing bell peppers, I think, is one of the most difficult, not difficult, but it requires the most patience, because peppers in general take a long time just to germinate and then just to start, and then it takes a long time for the fruit to actually ripen and turn. It's all about just being patient. But I will say, this plant right here is a chocolate bell pepper plant, and I thought it would be bigger as far as the fruit is concerned. But one of the plants is already turning chocolatey, but it's still small. So I think I accidentally planted some baby chocolate bell peppers. I don't know. I'm like, did I plant like the small sweet peppers for this plant? I have no idea. Hey y'all, so I wanted to give you a quick update on this beautiful sunflower that you see behind me. So this sunflower did so well this season. This is actually the only sunflower that has actually produced flowers as of right now, and I didn't even plant this one. It grew by itself in the middle of my rocks, but it's beautiful. We have at least 10 sunflower heads on this. I mean 17 sunflower heads on this, so that is amazing. Some of them have started to die off, which is what it's supposed to do, so I might cut those heads off and save the sunflower seeds if I can do that. But I also don't want to disturb the bees. The bees absolutely love this, so I think I might just leave it alone because it's very pollinator friendly, so I think I literally might leave it alone. Overall, it has been great, and it has been wonderful for the pollinators, and I love that so much. So I also wanted to show you some of the plants that are planted along this here fence line. First of all, I just love the mulch. My dad did a great job of putting the mulch on top of the weed blocker. As you can see, we still have to cut down some of these here weeds, but that's not too big of an issue. I wanted to just show you how beautiful these flowers are. This flower right here and the one next to it are marigolds, and they are just so beautiful. This one is about to produce, I think, its first flower, so I'll be really happy about that. You know, I thought that they would have produced flowers by now, because when I had them in my house, some of the marigolds that were in the small cups had already produced flowers in that small space. So I thought that these would produce even faster when they were actually planted, but nonetheless, they're finally going to start giving me flowers, so I'm really happy about that. And the one next to it, this is some type of pepper. I think it's a jalapeno pepper. You would think that I would know. I do know it's a type of pepper. And then I have some native plants next to that pepper, just some native plants. I got them from my local nursery, Urban Earth Memphis, and they are so beautiful. I specifically wanted to plant some plants that were native to my area and that attracted pollinators, like butterflies and beneficial bees. And I also have some herbs that are further along the fence line, and they are doing very well as well. Hey, so this is the pear tree. This pear tree, I don't know what's going on with it. The leaves look really healthy. Everything looks healthy, but I don't see any pears. Or not even just pears, but I don't see any flower buds on this tree. And so that's just kind of weird, because last year, around this time, I do think we started to get flowers. And so that just leads me to think that this past winter was a little too rough on it, because it got down to the single digits, and I do mean single digits, like 9 degrees. Maybe it put the tree into shock, I'm not really sure, but it's still early in the season. I mean, maybe we could potentially get some flowers and then potentially get some pears. And we did get fruit the last 2 years from this tree. I do get that question often. Yes, we did. It wasn't a big harvest, but we did get a few. Wow, so this section of the garden is just crazy. It is like everything has just grown excessively, and you know what, it's actually a blessing, but it is a lot to keep up with. So I'll try and explain everything while I can. These plants are obviously tomato plants. These are 2 different varieties of cherry tomatoes. One of them is the Sun Gold cherry tomato, the other one is the Super Sweet 100 cherry tomato. I have a lot of blooms on these plants, but I don't have tomatoes yet. I'm just like, have the bees forgotten to come over here? I'm not sure. But I have been trying to like carefully kind of shake the plants to see if I can help self-pollinate the plants. And then in between here, I have some zinnias that I planted, and then I also have some bee balm. There's 2 sections to this cinder block area. The section next to it has some more zinnias in it, but it also has something else, so I'm going to show you now. And as you can see, I have some really big, beautiful okra plants. And I have gotten a few okra harvests from this plant. I'm very grateful for that. I do have to keep an eye on the white flies causes damage or some other type of, maybe just ants. So I am going to come through here and spray it. It's something that I do every evening, but overall, everything is looking really good. And like I said, I have gotten some harvest off of these okra plants. And of course, I have to save my okra so I can make gumbo with it. And right here are just some more zinnias. These flowers are so beautiful. It's like breathtaking. It takes my breath away. I love it so much. Overall, I'm very happy with this section, and I'm happy that we were able to use cinder blocks to make a raised bed, because cinder blocks just, they withstand a lot. So I'm finished with the garden tour now, but I got a harvest. I don't know if you can see everything that's in here, but it's a really nice harvest. So I basically just got a few, not just a few, a nice amount of beefsteak tomatoes. I think I got about 12 of them. I also got a small cucumber, a muncher cucumber, as well as a zucchini squash. Now I did take off like the tip of it, but that's okay because I'm gonna cut it up anyways. So And these tomatoes are so beautiful. Look at that. So yeah, that's the harvest. So beautiful. Okay, y'all, that was the tour. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said, I had some good updates and some not so great updates, but that's okay. It's all a part of gardening. But before I go, remember, no matter how stressful your day is, no matter what you're going through, remember, just keep sowing. Bye.